All right, let's bring him in here. He was one of the top pass rushers of his era with a spin move that even James Harden would be jealous of. He currently ranks 18th all-time in career sacks, Super Bowl champ, 7-time Pro Bowler. Dwight Freeney is here. What's happening, Dwight?
Nothing much, man. How you doing?
We're doing great. We're talking a lot about this Tampa Bay New England game. Should we move on from it? Have you heard enough of this Tampa Bay New England game? Or
well, for me, I got to turn off the TV. You know what? Honestly, I have a lot of friends on that Tampa Bay team. A lot of that coaching staff coached me in Arizona and in the Colts. So there's a lot of good feelings there. Now the Patriots side, get that out of there, right? we don't like to watch too much Patriot stuff over here.
Well, it's funny, Dwight. You and Tom Brady actually go back a long way. You may have sacked him before anyone when you were at Syracuse. He was at Michigan back in '98. Do you remember that play specifically, or does it all mesh together?
No, absolutely. I mean, it was actually the first play I ever made in college. Yeah, I was a freshman, and they put me at like a D tackle position for some reason. I have no clue. But anyway, I made a quick move, and I ended up hitting Tom. Now, obviously, Tom wasn't Tom then. He was just a backup guy who was just getting thrown in the game because Syracuse was blowing him out. Right. And come fast forward all these years, he was my first play ever in college, period.
As best you can, Dwight, because you obviously are identified as a Colt, but you identify also that you played elsewhere too.
He was on 37 teams. We looked it up.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize there's that many.
Yeah.
Either way, congratulations too. We voted you amongst ourselves at least into the Hall of Fame. So we'll see how that goes.
Appreciate it, guys.
I think you get the gold jacket. When we put our stamp on it, it usually ends up going your way. But
yes, thank you.
So you'll go in as a Colt when you do get the honor. But as fans, we think, Brady is desperate to win this game. Belichick really wants to show Brady up. How true is that? I mean, for both guys, for Brady, is it more important to hang one on Belichick up in Foxborough or vice versa?
To be honest with you, it's kind of like one of those things where, you're a player out there and he said, I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to give 100%. And the other guy says, I'm going to give 110%. And I'm going to give 130%. At some point, that percentage just keeps going up and you're saying you're giving it your all. I think obviously there's a history there. It's too hard to measure who's going to want it worse. I think Belichick wants to win every single game, no matter who he's playing. All right. Does he want to win this one a little bit more? I don't know the history. Maybe they have bad blood. Maybe he's like, I really want to give it to Tom. Maybe Tom has bad blood. He's not really putting it out there. But based on the information that I have, it's just basically, look, they have so much respect for each other. And they're like, look, in the end, those are great years. We're just trying to win this game here. And obviously, it's going to mean a lot to both of them if they can win that game, clearly.
Well, but tactically then, from a practical standpoint, who does that favor? Belichick, the defensive wizard, or Brady being able to identify what any defense is trying to do on pre-snap? Who ultimately has the edge in that chess match?
I think the edge goes to Tampa Bay based on the fact that they have a better team. Okay, it's not just about Tom and the offense. That defense at Tampa Bay is pretty good as well, as you saw in the playoffs in the Super Bowl. Who basically won the Super Bowl was that defense. So, everybody likes to play this chess match between, Bill and Tom, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. But there are other phases of the game that really matter. And I think overall, Tampa has the better team, and that's why they win the game, not so much about Bill. Bill and the Patriots, they're in a rebuilding phase in a sense. People want to hype this thing up to being all of that. But remember what type of team they had last year. All right. I don't even think they were under 500 last year. All right. So this is the team that they have. They're, what are they, 1-2 now? They're under 500 team right now. Yes, there is going to be a little Bill and Tom in there sprinkled in. But it's not going to be, I don't think, as overwhelming as people think.
So you talking about the Tampa Bay defense, and I know like through the playoffs last year and the Super Bowl, they were ferocious. But this year, it seems like they haven't been getting to the quarterback nearly as much as they used to. And it seems like, we saw Sunday, Matt Stafford was able to take advantage of that, hit Deshaun Jackson for bombs left and right. What do you make of because I agree with you that the Tampa Bay defense really kind of led them through the playoffs and played a huge role in that Super Bowl. If this defense can't get to the quarterback, as somebody who is familiar with getting to quarterbacks, what does that take away from that Tampa defense? And like, will Mac Jones be able to take advantage of that?
Well, I've always said, when I used to play, I didn't care if you had Randy Moss. I didn't care if you had the best receivers in the game. They're never going to get the ball. And if I get there, right, they have less than 3 seconds between me and Robert Mathis to get there. So I don't care if you draft up this elaborate game plan, this sweet looking play that, I'm a double hitch and we're going to go deep. None of that matters if you get to the quarterback. But vice versa, if you don't get to the quarterback, every quarterback in the National Football League will look like a Pro Bowler. All right. They will sit back, sipping a margarita, say, no, that guy's not open. You guys can sit there and play quarterback in the National Football League if there's no one coming after you, right? Now, that being said, if you get those spirals, right? That being said, look, there's ups and downs when it comes to how people attack quarterbacks. Some games, you don't get any sacks. Some games, you get 5 or 6, okay? And that's just what it is. Now, Todd Bowles is a blitzer. That's what he likes to do. Now, if they don't blitz a lot, then you're asking the forefront guys to make all the plays. Depending on the concept that they're facing based on their protection, right, is going to determine if they're going to get the sacks. So you're playing a New England Patriot team who is a very smart team. What they like to do is get rid of the ball very quickly, regardless if Tom's in there or not. When they want to throw down the field, they max protect. They leave more guys to protect so that the quarterback has time to throw. I anticipate another game of not a lot of pressure per se, sacks, because if they're playing the New England Patriots, and that's something that they don't want. Now, a rookie quarterback, he may sit there and say, this guy's open. No, he's not. Oh, no, I'm getting sacked. That may happen. But from a systematic standpoint, I don't see a lot of sacks.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the fact that this is supposed to be, forget about what Patriots fans want it to be. This is supposed to be a rebuilding year for New England. And it's the equivalent of, oh my God, Brady needs 68.5 yards to break this record on our home turf. This is like, this is a rebuilding year. Like, oh man, we want to open this restaurant, but we don't have the permits yet. And now the World Fair has come to town. Like, this is terrible timing for Belichick, I think. But this is why I'm trying to get around the narrative, which is everyone's narrative, that Brady's going to break the record. He's going to throw 2 touchdown passes to Gronkowski. And this is going to be just a disaster for Bill Belichick. But I don't know. I haven't heard from you either in any way like how we could avoid this.
I don't necessarily. I mean, when we say a disaster, Bill Belichick losing is a disaster in his mind. It doesn't matter whether he loses by 20 points or 1 point. It's a disaster. Okay, so that's the mentality that they have. Are they going to win this game? I highly, highly doubt it. Will Bill, based on his skill set of him being a mastermind, chess master, whatever you want to call him, will it be a closer game than most people think? I believe so. Okay, I honestly believe so. But do they have enough? It's hard to see it. I mean, Tampa isn't playing the greatest ball right now either. They gave up 25 to 30 points to Atlanta. And I'm not saying that Atlanta's the greatest team, but it was a game until the fourth quarter, until all of a sudden, that offense and turnovers started to come up, on that other side. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be a good game, but I think Tampa's going to win.
Let's go a little more global then, because you talk about Belichick and you were on the wrong side of those trips to Foxborough in January. Well, listen,
not all of them.
That's what Belichick does. He puts QBs in bad spots, and 18 on your side was victimized by that. So I have to ask now, You went to Syracuse, played in the Carrier Dome, played your career in Indianapolis for the most part, then, some time in the Dome in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
But you as a defensive guy,
Mm-hmm.
what about now the Chicago Bears talking about doming their stadium? This is a terrible thing for football. Isn't it better when it's nice and open air and cold outside? That puts the quarterback at a further disadvantage. You can't support this stuff, right?
Well, it depends on your team and depends on your personnel, to be quite honest with you. Us in Indianapolis, we had our defense. Let's just talk about defense. We had one of the fastest defenses in the league those years that we were playing. Okay. Our defense was predicated on speed, explosion, and making plays sideline to sideline. What that means is if you have good footing, then your guys are going to be flying. If you have bad footing and it rains and there's mud and then there's snow, for the fans, it might say, oh, look, this is a great football game. But depending on that team and how it's built, it may be a detriment. For us and for me, when it snowed and it was muddy and it was wet, it took a lot away from my game because my game was predicated on speed, getting the corner. A big 380-pound slob of an offensive tackle only has to take 5 steps back and put his hands out. All right? For me, I got to make that big guy miss. I got to get through him. And now if I have to go through him, like lift him up, I'm playing into his hands. And if I don't have a corner to turn, then that's the problem. So for me, it's based on the defense. If you're let's just say the Pittsburgh Steelers, who back in the day would have these big, huge Casey Hamptons and all those big, huge defensive linemen, then guess what? It's to their advantage to play outside because they're not really worried about that. They just want big, huge guys hitting big, huge guys and stopping the speed.
Well,
on the
I mean,
side.
the Steelers did. I can remember one playoff game that they won in a dome.
Come on.
We try not to remember that.
That is so crazy.
We try to forget that.
You brought up a good point, though, Dwight. Like, is footing might be more of a combine note, right? Then I feel like it should be a stat even. Like, forget about percentage of rush percentage or pressure percentage. Footing. Why doesn't PFF come up with a footing?
Well, it's you would have to play the game and to understand it, to that level. And a lot of guys who are doing these statistics and stats, there's these guys with, their glasses in the back and just sitting there looking at all these statistics and all that analytics and all that stuff. That's what they're doing. They're not really out there as a player understanding, oh man, hold on. I got to get two longer cleats in the front, one smaller in the back. Oh, wait, I can't turn. Let me go back. Hey, guys, do you have any other new cleats? I can't really turn the corner. I can't stop. There's a lot of things that go into those games. All right. But if you're a big guy who doesn't care about speed, you're fine. You can wear flip-flops. Who cares?
I like that Dwight
you're not
in
trying
this
to run the
conversation
corner.
has taken down fat guys and nerds already. Slobs and nerds.
Dwight, I want to ask you, Micah Parsons, he's drafted as a linebacker, played linebacker at Penn State. All of a sudden, Randy Gregory, DeMarcus Lawrence get hurt, and Micah Parsons is just now playing defensive end. And, he looked good. He had the end of grass back at Justin Herbert in week 2 and just looked good against Philly in week 3. But I know you had the defensive end, you played linebacker a little bit. They had the transition period. How much longer can we expect Micah Parsons to be an effective defensive end? Or is this just something that is going to be a thing that he's able to do consistently for the rest of the season?
Well, I think there are similarities. For me, I think it was harder for me to go from defensive end and then make me an outside linebacker. All right. And I think, quite honestly, that was the beginning of the downfall of those years in Indianapolis where we started to fall apart, is because we took 2 defensive ends were, me and Robert Mathis, who are 5, 6, 7-year Pro Bowlers. And then all of a sudden, Chuck Pagano, great guy, ends up saying, you know what? I want to put in a 3-4 system. And you made us outside linebackers. And now all of a sudden, as a defensive end, you have blinders on. You're so focused on that guy. that offensive tackle, you know, you don't see so much. When you stand up and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, there's a receiver out here. Wait a minute, there's a running back coming over here. It becomes a different world just a little bit. Now, going after the quarterback, that's similar, okay? So I think for a guy who's an outside linebacker or a linebacker going to play a defensive end position, I think it's actually easier for him in a standpoint of the fact that he can get after the quarterback because he's been asked to blitz before. He's been asked to do those things before, all right? But a defensive end getting transitioned to an outside linebacker, you might be dropping back in coverage, covering Gronkowski 40 yards down the field in San Diego, and you're wondering why you're back out there. You know, that's just kind of how it is, how it was for me. I go to San Diego, and all of a sudden Tom's sitting there looking at me like, why are you in coverage? And I'm like, I don't know. And then I'm looking at Gronk looking at me like, oh, I'm going to kill you. And I'm like, you probably will. And sure enough, 40 yards down the field, I'm running, chasing Gronk. Yeah.
I love it. You mentioned Robert Mathis. It was a big summer for some of your former Colt teammates. Peyton, Edge got into Canton. We got to get a few more of you Colt players in there, right? Reggie Wayne, yourself, Mathis, maybe Vinatieri, even though he'll identify as a Patriots. You must be excited for this, right? It's inevitable.
Yeah, well, you hope and you pray. The thing is, as a player, you just do is all you can do is, what you put out there in the field. And then after that, the people vote for you and hopefully and pray that you get in. I think that we do have a lot of guys who have a lot of talent. You got Jeff Saturday was a great talent at center. Dallas Clark was good. I don't know if he has enough numbers to get in. I definitely think Reggie and Robert Mathis should definitely be in there. Vinatieri obviously should be in there. Eventually, I think they will get in there. Who knows when they're going to get? I don't know when I'm going to go. Who knows what's going to happen? You just hope and pray that, hey, you've done enough to get there.
Well, 87's got to go into the Hall of Fame, that's for sure. What number, you see the number changes, would you have gone against conventional pass rusher numbering and gone with one of the newfangled numbers? I could see in like an 8 would look cool.
Well, for me, I'm just kind of like, okay, look, my high school number was 44. My college number was 54, and I couldn't get 54 coming out of college, so I just said 93. I don't know if the number matters so much, but if it was me, I kind of like the traditional defensive numbers, just me, because I never had an offensive number, quote unquote, 44 maybe, but 54 and 93 are defensive numbers. I'm not going to change my number. If I'm already an established 93 guy, that's what you know me as. I want to be the best 93 you ever seen, and that's just what my whole mentality was. I don't care what number you give. Give me a number. I'm going to go ahead and make that number as special as possible. But I'm not a guy who's like, let me get in the number 2 because the 2 looks sweet, man. Look at that number 2 coming around the corner. I'm like, 2 is a receiver pencil net guy. Go ahead and give the number 2 to a quarterback or a backup quarterback or something like that.
Who does Dwight like besides Robert Mathis and Reggie Wayne? And now it's pencil necks, nerds, fat guys.
He likes speed rushers. That's who he likes. He likes speed rushers.
There you go. I'm loyal.
Dwight, do you like Hard Knocks? I want to talk to you about this. I mean, I would think most players wouldn't even want it for the preseason, but HBO does the 4-week lead up there. But now the Colts, your former team, is doing it like a mid-season Hard Knocks, and it could be tough for them. They could be, I hate to say it, they could be like 4-7 when this starts, or if they're lucky at this point, right?
I'm all the way against it. All the way against it. I mean, I'm so against it. Let me tell you, I never put a mic on. There's guys who would put a mic on for a game so that then the fans can get this inside look and feel of what is said and how it is. I could never do it because I know if I have a mic on, my grandmother or my mother is sitting there saying, wait a minute, what did he say? Because I'm cursing, dog cussing everybody, telling all, and I don't need all those bleeps and blops and all that stuff. My poor little grandmother at the house had the cat just crying her eyes out, like, oh my God, my grandson. And for me, it's too much anxiety. For me, it's kind of like, look, I need to stay focused and what I do, the same thing every single day, No surprises. I'm not going to fake a conversation. Like if I don't talk to that guy normally, I'm not going to talk to him now just because I have a mic on. I'm just going to stay focused on what I'm focused on. I'm not going to talk to the other guy on the offensive of the other team and give him a pat on the back for the mic. That's just not what I do. So for me, thinking about doing that mid-season could be an absolute disaster because it brings in elements that normally are not there. And guys are thinking about stuff. They're going to you're just doing this for the cameras, all of a sudden personalities that were never a personality become a personality. I'm like, where are you at the whole 6 weeks prior to? All of a sudden you're the rah-rah guy.
Yeah. And I also think that your grandmother would be surprised. She'd be like, oh, I had no idea Dwight hated the nerds, the pencil necks, and the fat guys so much.
Exactly. We don't need that.
Speaking of hate or dislike, at least, if it's the unvarnished truth that is going into those microphones in a couple of weeks, are we hearing teammates and otherwise saying, boy, this Carson Wentz experiment was a bad one, and I wish we had gone in a different direction?
Well, put it this way. If there is a mic on, you're never going to hear anything too bad unless the guy's a complete, I don't know. Maybe if he's concussed, all of a sudden he might just start talking. But most guys, they know they're mic'd. There's even signals like, hey. And then that whole conversation is all scripted.
All right, you're on a microphone now. Was Carson Wentz a bad experiment for the Colts to make?
No, it wasn't. I think this. If you look at the games that Carson Wentz played pretty good the first game. It was actually above average the first game and pretty decent the second game. The problem was the offensive line didn't protect him when the plays really mattered, okay, when it was needed for a play. I saw one game against Seattle. The offensive tackle just got completely ran over and got a sack when he was in. That's not Carson's fault. The red zone issues, that's a play calling issue, okay? What Carson's fault is him holding on to the ball a little bit too long trying to scramble with his feet. Me personally, if I was Carson, you should throw that ball away, okay? Do more of a Tom Brady, throw it out of bounds and all that type of scenario than trying to make plays with your feet because things like 2 sprained ankles happen, right? And now all of a sudden, something that you rely on as your mobility is now taken away from you. Now all of a sudden you just become a true pocket passer. And I'm not saying he can't make throws because he can, but I've always said that the quarterback position gets too much credit when you win and too much blame when you lose. It's somewhere in the middle of what's happening. So what the problem is with the Colts is that their identity, they're having a hard time understanding who they are. And who they are had always been running the ball. It's running the ball, and that's what happens. You run the ball, then it opens up the play action, and then they'll have success. So run the ball and stop putting so much pressure on Carson.
There you go. Well, I thank you for joining. I don't know where Martin just went, and I think he may have sensed that I was going to bring up the fact that he knows your wife, and so he skedaddled out of here.
I think actually he was going to call Peyton Manning to let him know that he just said the quarterbacks get too much credit. Another one who Freeney just went after there.
There you go. And trust me, I'm going to be who I am. All quarterbacks, I hate them other than if I played with you. And that's about it. And I somewhat like you just a little bit, not as much though.
I love it. Well, Dwight, thanks for coming on. We appreciate the time. Hall of Famer, Dwight Freeney. You heard it here.
Hopefully one day.
93 now and forever.
I love it.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Dwight.
No problem, guys. You take care.